What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Here with another fantastic interview. We're here with the one and only. We're here with the Big Kahuna, as the fishing people would say. Uh, you know, been months and months in the making ever since I got in the scene. There's this one name you would hear, almost like he who shall not be named, but in a positive presence. And, the names are whispered around, the bands are whispered around, and that's how you kind of find your footing. And I found this one band that really spoke to me, and I'm here talking to the mastermind himself. So, a round of applause for those watching at home to Mr. Pat Flynn, the one and only. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Is that true? Do I have? All right. Okay. All right. I'll take it. I'll
Well, I
take
mean,
it.
I'll tell you, right? Like I got into seeing, now I have a label, I book shows,
What's
but
your label?
Peg Leg Records.
That's a
So,
good name. That's a good name.
you like it?
Yeah. Is that like a Captain Ahab like reference or something like
I
that?
mean, somewhat. It's just we wanted something a little bit fun because a lot of the record labels are super, they're strict, they're serious. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you need
Yeah.
some whimsy in your life, you know?
Yeah. You have a good vocabulary. Let's roll. Let's do this. All right.
Sweet. Well, my first question is, you're a history teacher, which is absolutely incredible. That is something that I want to go into at some point in my life,
Oh, nice.
hopefully sooner than later.
It's a good job. I like it.
And I was wondering if there
I-
is
I'm just
a,
I'm just gonna fix my hair. I think I'm fine.
it's great.
I just jumped out of the shower. I
Yeah.
forgot that this was a video-based interview. So for the viewers at home, yeah, I'm trying to make sure that I look somewhat presentable here. I didn't put the air dryer on. I interrupted you.
You're good.
Go ahead. You like history. I
I
appreciate
love
it.
history. And the question was, right? Is there a bleed from hardcore into your teaching life and vice versa? Everything you've learned from teaching into hardcore and maybe like the relationship that those two aspects of your life have.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I try to just be who I am. At all times and try not to put on a show and uh like I don't particularly like costumes and I just like authenticity. I don't know if you're a fan of Nick Cave
I
and the
love Nick
Bad Seeds.
Cave.
Oh, great. This is going to be a great interview.
I already know it is.
No, but I recently heard that a friend of mine told me that he only wears suits.
Yeah.
That's it. Like he's not like throwing throwing on the sweats to get some coffee on a Saturday in Brighton. He is always wearing suits, and like that's that's an authentic person who is who they are at all times. I am someone like part of like I will wear my teacher attire, which is like I just maybe I'm stuck in some old school stuff, but like I just have like a button down and like, I'm not I can't be casual with the kids. I'm sorry. How old are you,
I'm
Jay?
15.
You're 15. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I work with kids your age and a little bit older, and I don't know. Like I'm not I'm curious how you might feel about this, but like I'm not as a teacher, I'm not interested in being friends with my students. I'm friendly, but they don't I don't think that they need me as a friend. Of course I'm going to be like I'm friendly and I'm someone who they can talk. I want to be someone that they can talk to, someone that they know is going to listen, but in the same way I might not approach like I don't want to be friends with my therapist, like I don't want to be friends with my like, you know, my doctor. I need help, and of course it's a different relationship. It's a 5 days a week thing, but like, at the end of the day I do as a teacher I really do kind of preserve the line as like um like instructor. I almost said leader. I'm not opposed to leadership. I think leadership matters, but I also want to promote everyone like having a sense of leadership themselves. And if I know it's instructor, and like it's helpful to see to have someone in the room who says like this person instructs us, and so there are ways in which we can kind of communicate to each other. I think like, hey, like I'm friendly and we can have fun, we can laugh, and we can be serious, we can be silly. At the end of the day, I am a little bit of the instructor. I'm the instructor here. You're 15. I'm like, and I'm 40, and so, and I know, and I do know more things about how to do certain things, and I know that you guys know more things than I do, and in certain regards, and I know more things about you guys in certain regards. Let's make this work together. But ultimately, I am going to be kind of steering the ship, and I hope we're all okay with that, because we have to make this work, and I don't think that that's all too controversial. Especially if the way in which my kind of classroom works, and this is to kind of get to your question. My favorite moments at shows, uh, like when I say favorite, I just mean like I kind of casually like it, but it's like this like cathartic, real like height of humanity, I think I would say, moment is when like I forget that I'm the one holding the microphone and I'm the singer. When I just sort of feel completely immersed with the people in the audience. There's something about that I feel like is really what was the purpose of music. Um, you know, this idea because like there's the reality of like there's the stage and then there's the pit or the standing area, the viewing stations. And that can convey a sense of like superiority. Keyword can. Well, I'm on the stage. You're on the ground. I don't but that is a reality. Like in the same like I'm the teacher. You're the students. Like that's a reality, but it doesn't have to dominate the experience of interaction. You can leave the stage, which is why I love punk culture. It's a culture to me that is about saying, hey, there is a stage here, but we don't have to stay on it. And there's a ground there, and you don't have to stay on it. You can get up here, and I can get in there. And I think that that's a really, I think it's a like you can have that in the classroom. So you know, I my if I'm in like a unit, the way in which I'm a kind of a skills based teacher first, and then the content is in there, which I think is if you are a teacher who loves the content, what I've learned in my studies of educational research is that taking a skills first approach is actually the way to kind of better reinforce the content, to kind of getting people to learn how to do things with the content that you're going on about. And but the going on about it tends to happen at the beginning of a unit. I'm getting some background and some context, and then we're going to get into the weeds of some historical episodes that we can debate, we can discuss, and we can argue back and forth. So like it kind of starts off with a lot of me, and then there's like, let's practice this newer skill or the skill that we've been working on all year, which is typically about discourse and logic and reason and specific historical thinking skills that I want them to practice. And then, towards the end, most units ideally are really kind of ending with like really a long form, completely student led, student centered discussion, debate, and then followed by the debate, the discussion. The debate is I point you aside, and that's like ideally 2 days, and then there's a discussion which ideally is 2 days. So it's like an entire week, if not 2 weeks of like student centeredness. But here's the thing, it's not the entirety of that. So like that I think is a way in which I learned through punk culture that just because there's a stage and there's a band, it doesn't mean they have to stay on there. And just because I'm on the crowd, I'm in this. I've been permitted by the social contract of my punk culture that I can get up on that stage, uh, and the singer can get it down here, and it can work. And then we can also go back to our respective places and understand that there's no hierarchy here. And I think that the same thing, that messaging was absent for me in my high school, and I found it in the local punk scene, and um, I've just one of the reasons why I became a teacher was because I had a really great middle school education, that involved the students in the discussions and the debates about history, looking at what's in the textbook and actually kind of questioning, well, is that really how it went? Let's look at some other evidence and see. So uh, that and then I got to high school and it just wasn't there. I wasn't involved. It was like my history teacher talking with the one kid who really liked history. But I really liked history. I liked being involved in it though, not just like doing some Jeopardy stuff, quiz fun fact stuff with the teacher who also knew stuff. We would just sit there and like, cool, looks like this guy likes history. That it was just a really it was years of like really disappointment. I loved history. But at the same time, I was finding what I had experienced in middle school being involved. The teacher is asking us, what do we think happened? Not, hey, this is how it happened. So I think that there's some bleed. That's a more, I guess, kind of like heady conceptual take to it. But then there's kind of like some more specific things like there's some theatrics. I think if you were asking any of my students, they'd say like Mr. Flynn's kind of a theatrical teacher at times. There's seriousness. There's um, there was this band called Out Cold from Massachusetts. Just a fastball pitch down the middle hardcore band. And I just remember the singer, he passed away years ago, but I saw them a few times and the singer didn't say anything. He just got on the stage and they played. And most singers would be like, hey, what's up? We're so and so. Thanks for having us out tonight. Really want to bring attention to this. And like, that was nice. But like, whoa, when the singer of Out Cold would just stand there in between the songs, waiting. It taught me the power of silence and the power of pacing, and not in some, excuse my swearing, some like bullshit politician. I've learned how to speak charismatically type of stuff, but like a way to kind of get you to like let's because like I teach history and it's just like completely colored with tragedy and injustice and sadness, and so you got to create the space for people to think and enough to potentially get as close as to the feeling of what this historical circumstance, whether it be reading Henri Christophe's account of what it was like to be enslaved in a French colony in Saint Domingue before the Haitian Revolution. Like there's a pacing there, and so like I like so bands like Out Cold when I was a kid, they taught me about pacing and I think about and again not just to kind of like work the charisma or the Rizz as the youth say, um, but like to really authentically get people to think about what's in front of them and what the singer of Out Cold was. I think in my impression was he was trying to like create an environment of like saying you're looking at me and I'm singing to you lyrics that I actually care about. There's pain and there's suffering. I think the singer's name was Mark, but yeah, he I don't know if it was Mark. I forget what it was. Someone can fact check me on YouTube. But read those lyrics. Those are some real angry lyrics that left an impression. I appreciate that because hardcore anger is a very important emotion, and I think it's got to be used wisely. And I think hardcore, because it's such an aggressive thing, it's like it kind of permits like constant anger, and it can kind of rub the emotional value of that of expressing anger just like raw and useless. And so I really love that. Lesson Impression. That was like 30. God, that wasn't 30 years. It was like 25 years ago that I was watching. It left an impression on me, and so those little things kind of peer into my peer into my world as a teacher. And the last thing I was asked to be the speaker at my school's graduation this year, which was cool. It's a big school, so every class has like almost 1,000 kids. You help couple that with their parents and their families. So it was like in a big arena. I've never been more nervous about anything in my entire life. Uh, was like the day after I played this festival called Tied Down in Detroit, and it like uh I did it the morning after that. Took a 5 a.m. flight and into a graduation at like 10 a.m. in the morning. But like, I spoke about this because I had to think about, speaking to 3,000 people, I was asked, democratically voted by the senior class. I felt it was one of the highest honors I've ever had, really, truly. Um, and I had to really think about like um, what mattered to me, and why I like my job so much. And I spoke on the importance of like, not just like, you know, taking the opportunity, but like really giving the opportunity. And I think I spoke on a lot of that because the world of hardcore, in my view, is just like everybody's giving an opportunity. Not like all the time, but like I've been the benefactor of an opportunity, but because someone felt obligated to give it to me. Have Heart was not a cool band, and at a time in which you really had to know the right people, you had to say the right things, you had to wear the right clothes to be cool and accepted in the very cliquey era of hardcore. And But we didn't ascribe to that. Nonetheless, though, some people decided to give us an opportunity to, because they kind of believed in us. And so I think that like that element of like the world of punk and hardcore has like seeped into um, my role as a teacher. So I'm a big advocate of giving students a second chance. If they you know fuck up a test or something like that, like, hey, I think that you can do this again. And now you can't get 100%. You can get up to a 90%. Retakes. I don't know about you, Jay, but like, retakes, they might not be all that valuable if you can only get like a C, as high as a C or something. That's what my father would call whipped cream on horse shit. It's like, oh, thanks. What's that? So I kind of want to keep the incentive of like, hey, let's try it again. You can get as high as a 90%, but part of that is, you got to meet with me. We got to talk. We got to talk about your test prep. Like, how did you study for this? Like, did you study? But walk me through your process. Like, literally tell me a picture of what studying looks like to you. Give me a date, time, and place when it's all happening. So I help them kind of think about their own thinking. And usually in our conversation, like, yeah, I haven't done any homework along the way. I haven't been preparing for this until basically an hour the night before. And I'm like, well, do you think that that's like really a recipe for getting, I don't know, the grade you desire, at least a 90%? Like, do you think that that can come from that? It's just that this is a lot of beginning of the year stuff. Students are kind of getting used to the new environment, the new skill set. So, like, I think the ethos of hardcore and opportunity and kind of creating like, a chance has seeped into my classroom. Much maybe perhaps to the frustration of colleagues who, might say like, oh, we don't like retakes. It's a lot of work. And I get that. I get that. And there's arguments against my policy, but like I have too much evidence that that's helpful for young people to get a chance to try again. But on the very taxing on my side, really process of like you have to meet with me, tell me about your test prep, and then you tell me about your test taking. But I do see better results. I see kids getting better at it. So, uh, you know, it's not how life works, but it's how it's going to work in the classroom. And I think it's a good policy. I have too much evidence. If I didn't see the evidence that it was working, then I wouldn't do it. But I do have evidence that's working. So those are the ways in which hardcore has really kind of bled into that. And that's a very long-winded answer, but what I'm realizing is I only explain how hardcore has informed my teaching. Teaching has interestingly informed my hardcore punk time in many, many ways. Um, I'm a lot more measured in what I might say uh, on stage than I used to be before I became a teacher. Um, I'm a little bit more thoughtful in how I like interact with the public. Uh, and I've learned, and through the discourse of talking about really controversial topics in the classroom, I've learned that that is one of the most perfect arenas for that to happen. And so, um, like, I like to. I feel like it's important to speak on uh, like particular issues, but I also like I'm a little bit critical of like the idea of like, well, if you have a platform, you should say something. It depends on the platform. Is your platform a place where you can have a long form discussion? Or is your platform a place where you can kind of get on a soapbox and offer your 2 cent ideals? Like I'm a little bit more favorable to the former than the latter of that. Like but if I am going to speak on a hot topic, whether it be, you know, Israel, Palestine, or, some type of like pressing issue, uh, if I feel as if like I need to say something in the public moment, I'm not sloganeering. It's just not going to happen. I, it's just not in me. It's not who I am, and I apologize to no one. I'm not gonna like change who I am. I am just I've seen I have too much evidence to be like more in favor of the long form thought of the one that has a subject and a predicate, the one that is specific, the one that invites conversation, the one that invites dialogue and discourse, and not the one that incites just pure emotion. I want thought. So, and that's a product of over a decade, 13 so on years of like just seeing the profound power of what it means to engage in dialogue with other human beings across lines of ethnic lines, political lines, class lines. I have too many letters of appreciation from students over the years about my approach to that to get me to just suddenly get on stage and just start chanting whatever you want me to chant, like I'm like a dog or something like that. It's not, and I'm not saying if you're chanting a slogan that makes you some type of weird puppet or anything like that. It's just that's just me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a lot. I'm sorry. I just tend to,
No, you're good.
I just want to cover all the bases.
No, I really appreciate that. First of all, I just want to say I know this is going to be a great interview just based off of that response alone. I 100% agree with everything that you said that school needs to be more maybe thought-based, more interactive rather than a kind of quizzing area. Because I also had uh, that same experience where my middle school was, I mean, incredible. Like the teachers were the most friendly and courteous and understanding people I'd ever met before. And now I'm lucky that the high school I chose to go to is an IB school, so I've got to
Uh-huh.
drive a little bit more to get to it.
Okay.
But these teachers are just as good, and
Oh, nice.
it's amazing. And I get to talk to them, and they understand me on a human
Mhm.
basis rather than, like you said, numbers on a piece of paper
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something more than that, which is incredible. Um, so yeah, I 100% agree with everything you had to say. Now, we spent a little while talking about the education part of hardcore, right? I want to talk about the youth.
Hmm.
So, on Saturday, I went to go see this incredible bill at this place called South Bend Commons. It's like the spot because I'm in Atlanta, right? So it's like the spot of Atlanta. All
Hmm.
the craziest shows. It was hot. It was sweaty. I kind of got spin kicked multiple times. My jaw was bleeding by the end of it. And I came home the next day. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so tired. And my mom is buzzing up my phone, and she comes to my room. And she's like, "This moshing stuff. This is disgusting. You can't do this." And she gave me this whole big speech about how dangerous moshing is and how dangerous the culture is, and how she wants me to stay within my boundaries of the suburbs, So
Hmm.
I kind of want to just discuss the culture, of kind
Hmm.
of going maybe against the grain in your school, against the grain on what your parents have to say, because of course their view into hardcore, their view into screamo, into the alternative is really skewed. Like my mom's just afraid for my safety, and I get
Oh, yeah.
that. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I just wanted to maybe discuss the building up of a scene. And I know in the Half Heart shows of New York, you talked about the international scene. So that's certainly something we can talk about. just kind of like these different points of youth and the separation, I think, between their parents and between their high schools and between society, you know?
Hmm. I think your mom's right. I'm sorry. Um, so I are you familiar with Fugazi?
Of course, me,
Yeah.
I've been trying to get in touch with Ian for a long time, but he has the same principles as you, where, but it's Ian. So, I mean, this guy has emails coming up out of his butt, which I understand. He's a legend.
I've actually I've never met Ian Mackay, but from what I gather, uh, from what I gather is if you handwrite a letter to him, that's probably the best way. Um, so uh, in the one of the things that they were kind of Fugazi was known for was like their kind of adamant position towards like moshing and stage diving, and I think they took a big hit from the hardcore scene for that, and it was very much so the safety. I remember reading in interviews because I was like, but you gotta mosh, like you gotta stage dive. It's in my soul, and you have to do it. And I remember reading these interviews, and he was talking about how it's less dangerous for the people. Um, it's less dangerous for the people doing the diving, and more dangerous for the people getting landed on. I've had I've had two or three concussions just from getting landed on. I got a really bad one at this one of the early festivals. Um, this thing called Pausing Numbers. Someone jumped off a PA, landed right on my head, and you would have thought I was drunk if it wasn't for the fact that I was in the I was in the back. Oh, it says we have 9 minutes and 50.
Yeah. So that happens sometimes. We can move on to a different Zoom like
Okay. All
two
right.
minutes before. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. Um, so wait a minute. I gotta double check. I just hit the OK button.
Yeah, you're good.
It's been recording, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. All right. Just double checking. Oh my God.
I know.
Um,
Well, I don't pay for Zoom because I'm not paying. That's excuse my language. That's bullshit. I'm not paying for Zoom. Like that's insane to me. Communication. So we move on to different Zooms and whatever, you know.
okay. I have Google Meet, which I think won't have this problem.
It's
Uh,
funny. So I don't want to go too off track. The drummer of Ween, who's a good friend of mine, we were
nice.
trying to do an interview, and we were having trouble with Zoom. So he was like, "Let's go on Google Meet," and Google Meet gave me more crap, which was ironic.
Okay.
And then I don't know. There's no good solution. The ones that are great, you have to pay $30 a month for. I don't have $30 a month, so it's what it is.
Yeah. Not a problem. Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, there's some like real safety issues, and there's nothing more tragic than someone not being able to someone losing a major bodily function just because of a show. Um, and I remember reading what Ian had to say, and I remember not scoffing at it because most people are like, "Fuck Fugazi," and they're that type of stuff. We're gonna watch what we want, but I wasn't like saluting him. I remember just thinking, I think it's possible to create an environment where you can still do that stuff and like really have that release of like to music that sometimes is quite cathartic without people getting hurt. I think I remember just thinking like this is possible. Like it's totally possible. Um, and so I knew that doing how far I wanted to create an environment where like that seemed like that's going to be the case. And um, so I hearing that you get like kicked in the face, like was it like someone like going into the crowd and like hitting people or like kicking the crowd or something like that?
Ironic enough, it was a singer of the opening band, and it was their first show, and I was in like the front lines because I'm a bit of a small guy,
Yeah.
I was in the front lines trying to see the action, and that way when the pit opens up, you can kind of jump in and kind of
Uh-huh.
pick, you know? So I'm just sitting in the front. The dude starts like, doing the thing at a random in a buildup of a song, which was
Yeah.
kind of like, it was kind of crazy, but I'm reflecting on it on Sunday morning, and I'm like, I feel like that was kind of an important moment just in my moshing, in my hardcore, in my screamo kind of era, just to at least experience that, you know? Because I don't do that
Yeah.
kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
So my computer was just wigging out for a second. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
So it was kind of accidental.
Who
The
knows?
okay. So the thing I hated, see, like I like the old Boston crew, they used to just like pick pile on each other. I love that. They would just all jump on each other. And you could maybe break an arm or something like that, but that was like the old way in Boston in the like 19 early 1980s. And it was like kind of at odds with the like pogoing and the circle pit. It was just like bomb into each other. But when you're like body, and again, I'm talking getting into the weeds of the physics of it. When your body is like bouncing off of somebody and it's kind of just run into them, I really don't. I think it's hard to like. It's like one of the things we would do in like growing up when the mosh part would happen is like we would do the side to side and we would like jump onto people, like onto our friends, like just jump onto them or like, or like, you know, roll into them and then go back in and then go to side and like that was great. It was moshing. That to me, that's like what moshing is. You just kind of whoa, whoa, whoa. And then if it was stage diving, no one the guys, the slightly older guys that I watched them, they would stage dive very carefully and not in this like feet first, like we're gonna slam and hurt people. But then there was an era in the early 2000s where like people we called it die casting. There was this band called Die Casting, but we called it die casting when you would just like run it. Kids would like go into the crowd and literally punch the people who are clearly they're observing. To me, what's written in the social contract of the room is if I'm not in the front row, like you can if I'm on the edge, the margins of the pit, if you will, like I'm willing to say, hey, someone's gonna bump into me. Like I'm the wall, like that's fine. But if you're like if you're behind that person who's on the margins and you're even further, to me the social contract is don't hit me in the face. If I'm close to the stage, I'm willing to get jumped on. I'll put my hands up. Hopefully you're gonna jump in a thoughtful way that's not gonna like break my neck. And you gotta be alert. You gotta be all right. You're coming there. You're coming there. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Usually, if there's enough people, like there are ways to do it. And that's one of the things I'm like so impressed with it sometimes. But like the half hour played this show 7 years ago outside. It was like 10,000 people showed up. There wasn't one major, there wasn't like one injury that like Bob Shed, who helped, book it with me. He was like, dude, there were no injuries. It's 10,000 people. To me, that was like, that's because like, I think the people understood the social contract of half art. You don't come here to fuck anybody up, to hurt them. We're here to connect under some like possibly common ideas and that are very rooted in humanism, universalism, and like and just like human dignity and stuff like that. And so to me, I was like, yes, you can create that environment. Um, but when I go to shows now, like if I don't want to have any, if I'm just like I don't want to get bunked around, I'm just in the back. You know what I mean? I'm out of the way. And if I want to mosh, I'll mosh, but I'm not gonna mosh like a jerk. And I'm also gonna understand that like in the actual pit, some hands are gonna be waving around, and I'm gonna get bonked up. Then I'm gonna get bonked up. That's just kind of the deal. But I made that. I sort of made that decision. Um and hope but hopefully if I get like I actually did I actually the last two tied downs that I've gone to right before Have Our played, Youth of Today played, was like one of my all-time favorite bands. And I had to mosh. And then Hope Conspiracy played this year before Fiddlehead, and played one of my favorite songs I listen to like every day. And I was like, I'm gonna get into it. I love this song. I love the lyrics, and so I went for it. And I got I got jammed up. I got knocked in the face a little bit, but not luckily not too hard. But I would have been real angry if that was like an intentional hit. Someone saw me and knocked me. Like that type of stuff. I have never, like I one of the things I see kids do, like they kind of do like the fake hitting thing. Like
Yeah.
you can, if you watch closely, they're not hitting that hard. They're like it's creating an appearance. I'm like kind of like whatever. Like like at least you're not die casting people like
Yeah.
really like full force. Some kids would bring like brass knuckles and disfigure people. I
It's
remember being
crazy.
like, this is ogre stuff. This is like orc behavior. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
wait. Punches in the pit at
Yeah, yeah. It's a new
yeah.
fad. It, I like it because when you look closely, it's like they're not really hitting that hard, or they're not even really hitting. But ultimately, I don't know. I don't know what to tell people. Like, listen, I started a band called Have Heart. Like, what do you want from me? Like, are you surprised that I'm like, yeah, I don't particularly like the violence, the images of violence. I've always been of the mind that I like my hardcore dangerous, but not violent.
Yeah. And you can see
Violence.
that. I mean, through your Instagram bio, through all the half-heart merchandise, it's like very clear. Half-heart. In the lyrics too. I mean, like I feel like all of it kind of contributes to a peaceful brutality, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know about the brutality, but it's just a tough word. But no,
Yeah, of
yeah, I think but the idea of like it should be dangerous but not violence, because violence kind of to
course.
me it connotes some type of intention that I don't particularly love. And in the dangerous thing is like, hey, like I think that that's a good moniker because you go in expecting some tough stuff can happen, but if you're super alert, I am still alert if I ever endeavor into the wildness. So, but I really I think, but the thing is with a mindset like that, that also means that I'm not trying to hurt anybody. And I'm also mindful of like how I might hurt somebody with what I do. So, and I think that we're capable of a higher status, more evolved status. So I think your mom's right to be like, hey, what the hell? You're all messed up. But so uh, I don't know. I think anyone should have the right to be like, no one should be disfigured.
Course.
But also that's also one of the challenges of the culture is that it has a it has a tough veneer. And I'm okay with that because I also think that upon like I had this lesson that I used to do, or I would play an image of youth today in the 1980s, playing their song, like but I put it hit mute, and I would say, all right, there's some like I used to teach a course on the Holocaust, and we would look into a lot of social psychology and you're just talking about prejudice, prejudicial, judicial thinking. Um, and I would say like, all right, so like let's see, let's guess what they're singing about, and they would think that these four guys with shaved heads, these like white dudes, just like buff and like looking like jocks, like throwing each other around, would be like just like white power or racist stuff. That's what the kids would think that they were saying, and then I'd show them lyrics that to the song they were playing. It was the lyrics to "Break Down the Walls," and they were like, "This sounds like it was written by Martin Luther King." Like these are all about breaking down barriers that, create hierarchies between race, class, creed, and so forth. Um, and so that lesson, that activity has always kind of stayed with me because I think it's a pretty direct reference to like this other part of my life. But I don't know. I think it's a necessary challenge for all human beings, and regardless of your age and regardless of your position, even as a parent. And this isn't me like criticizing your mom or anything like that. This is just to all humans. I do it too sometimes. There's some things I don't fully understand that like my kids are into. They're young and they're like 6 and 4, but like I'm also gearing for like they're gonna discover things that I might not fully understand. And I need to, I mean, I should do some research. I should really kind of see if there's something that I'm missing here. Clearly, it's connecting with you. Is it connecting with you for dubious reasons or positive reasons? And so, um, my parents were delight, delighted to see that I had found this culture that thought, you know, the culture of straight edge, that thought that like, drinking and doing drugs was just not cool. My parents were like, oh, you can be a part of this for the rest of your life, and we'll never, never ask you about this. That was kind of the clincher with my parents and
Yeah.
um, the whole straight edge scene. That was the big in. That got me it got me a lot of rides to shows for my parents. So anyway, there was another aspect to your question that I wanted to address. What was it again?
Like the upbringing of the scenes.
Do you mean like how
The
like scenes are like kind of how they
Well,
build and
I think something that was interesting, at least in my scene in Atlanta, is like the evolution of the scene. Because we started out as a primarily hardcore punk-driven scene, and now you look and it's screamo and it's emo violence,
mm.
which I love, and it's different. It's not as maybe
Is
the
slow
lyrics.
is how are you a fan of Slow Fire Pistol at all?
I don't know who they are.
Oh man. Oh,
Got
Jay.
some digging to do.
So far, you're talking like like screamo. This is they harken back to more 90s style. The guitarist is Hank from the band Foundation.
Okay, well, of
Uh,
course, no foundation.
yeah. But lyrically, musically, if you are into man, there's another band called Malady, that is from kind of like the early 2000s.
Uh,
They're not from Atlanta. I forget where they're from. I think they're from like Virginia or something like that. A band called Malady. It's like Page 99. They're of like
I know.
the
Okay, I know Page 99.
yeah, they're of that flavor, but done with a real informed sensibility.
Yeah, give me the
They're
name again.
called Slow Fire Pistol, and they
Thank you so
are
much.
straight from Atlanta.
Hell yeah.
You gotta dive in. They're one of the best going, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I scenes like yeah, it's a curious factor, like how they build and evolve over time. I think it's the part of that is how they or the change over time element is more interesting to me. And I don't know everything, but I've seen things rise. And like, you look at Boston, I think a lot of places are very much so dominated by their history. So, but they don't have to be. uh, like sonically, but spirit wise, Massachusetts has long been dominated by, in terms of like the hardcore scene, the kind of like working stiff spirit, you know, let's play anywhere, uh, spirit that was set by the founders with Alba Real, rest in peace, uh, of SSD and, bands like Jerry's Kids, Gangrene, the Proletariat, like all the Massachusetts early 80s hardcore bands. There's just like a total pretty, I don't know, like uh, like a spirit of intensity, just like like a real gotta do it no matter what. And also a spirit of kind of more or less kind of being unconcerned with like what people really think. Um, and I think that that's just persisted, and you see it peter out, and getting to the change over time. You see it peter out in '85 when those bands decided to change the sound, and it kind of pops up again with bands like Slapshot in the late '80s, and then it's revived in the mid '90s with the straight edge scene is basically revived in the '90s with 10 Yard Fight, In My Eyes, bands like Right Brigade, Reach the Sky. They kind of really create this hot spot of like straight edge hardcore, kind of more modern hardcore, and then American Nightmare kind of takes over, and it's like American Nightmare and Bane are really kind of like these like lyrically extremely thoughtful bands that super impacted me, and to kind of like respond to like the intense seriousness of the bands like American Night, lyrical seriousness of bands like American Nightmare and Bane and Hope Conspiracy and Suicide File. You see the rise of like the locking out scene, which is much more like, hey, this is this is about moshing and having fun, and that's cool too. And then from there, it was like Half Art was responding to a little bit of both. We can be straight edge, we can have fun, and let's be super serious with this stuff here and there. And then after that, it got super serious. And then the bands like Free Spirit and the Rival Mob kind of like took that, and it was very much so kind of a response to again like the hyper seriousness of what was like kind of the half art era. Um, so like my bigger point is, and that's a history from like 1980 to 2010. That's like a it's like a 30-year history I just sort of ran through, but like um if there's like a dominant sound of like a collection, like in not just one band, there's like multiple bands. Um, People respond. They it can doesn't always. It can kind of create like a like an opposing force. There's some like Newtonian logic there. Every action has an equal like oppositional reaction to it,
Uh-huh.
and it doesn't have to be that way. But it's interesting, and I think it's just like palette. It's like people just want to have something, switch it up. And so I think that that's how it can kind of evolve over time. And so whatever tends to be in vogue at the time in your scene, say right now, it's like emo violence, you said, and um, maybe like to me that seems to me quite on par with the tradition of the Atlanta scene. So some things like are continuities, but what was also big for a long time was kind of like the heavy hardcore, kind of maybe even more traditional hardcore sound. It's hard for me to keep in touch, like really trying to follow the through line of like a scene I'm not really there for. But like, I'm sure that whatever is what in any scene, whatever is currently in vogue is likely to be some type of reaction to something that was maybe dominant, or it's a response to there being nothing going on. You know what I mean? I'm always fascinated when scenes just kind of scenes that don't have a long history like Boston, like that just kind of like really produce something out of relative nowhere. There's no, it's not a response to a sound, it's a response to an absence. That to me is always
Yeah.
fascinating.
I think maybe seen that, and again, I'm not as informed, but in the short time I've been in the scene, for me, Florida has been really inspirational to see these incredible emo bands. Because I think the South is characterized by emo, what I've seen, and in
Really.
Florida specifically, seeing these incredible metalcore and emo acts just bloom and blossom,
Hmm.
and then everyone support each other. Like all the Georgia bands go on tour in Florida, all the Floridian bands go on tour in Georgia.
Nice.
It's just this beautiful connection. And the way I see it, because the Atlanta scene is very much youth, and it's
Mhm.
very much youth that are broke. Like
Hmm.
the two things that go in hand, but also charity. Peg
Hmm.
Leg Records, the record label that I run, is purely for charity. We
Oh wow.
only do charitable stuff, and it's kind of awesome to see kids my age like scrounge up the last of their money to go donate and have some fun. and
Hmm.
at the same time support this new wave of emo violence. Because if you're not too well versed in it, it is kind of like a love child between hardcore and emo.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. I love it, you know? And it may not be something you can listen to on the daily, but it's something that when your emotions are ebbing and bowing, it hits really awesomely, you
Yeah.
know?
The late 90s, early 2000s screamo scene was huge in New England. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Jay. I got to. I think I might have to brush up on emo violence. It's not my forte. But I'm always looking for new stuff.
You should. It's
But
awesome.
um, I think Fiddlehead's playing Atlanta.
It
If I'm
kills
not.
me. It kills me because it's on a Thursday or a Wednesday or something, and my mom's a doctor. It's one of those things where like, I wish it was on a Friday. I wish it was on a Saturday. So
I'm sorry about
no,
that.
no, it's not.
Well,
You know, we
if
can
you have a spot on the guest list, all right,
appreciate it.
you're all set. And for what it's worth, there's no one's gonna be getting hit in the face at a Fiddlehead show. I'll tell you that much. Um, but um, yeah, I'm always just I think hardcore is so fascinating how it changes over time. I'm always interested to see like how things have shifted. When I see friends from around the country, I'm like, what's going on in your scene? My I'm always looking for like when like that band excuse me, hold on a second.
You're good.
Um band Knocked Loose, they've really kind of like raised the flag for Louisville. You know, Trapped Under Ice was really like, I guess like that's a new term this conversation has produced, like flag raising bands. The ones that are like, okay, we've had like, Baltimore had bands like Stout. It had a history, but like Trapped Under Ice raised that flag. They made everyone look at it. I like I'm always fascinated when you get to states that, are maybe haven't we have that flag hasn't been raised yet, and what bands will do that? I'm paying close attention to Mississippi, uh, with bands like MS Paint,
They're
who
playing
are
Atlanta. I
yeah,
think they
oh
may have just
nice,
played Atlanta. They're awesome.
oh yeah, I love them, love them. Uh, my new band, How Much Art, is playing some gigs with them this weekend. I'm real excited for it. Great band, great people, but to me they are flag raisers, but part of that flag raising element is like, will the flag stay up and have like, so to me it's like you get from Trapped in Rice, you're getting Turnstile, you're getting Ended, you're getting Jive Bomb, like you're getting this like scene, and so um I'm curious. I want to keep an eye on Mississippi. Like, are there going to be bands that kind of follow MS Paint? Um, So I think that that's cool. But it's been weird for me because the flag was raised in Massachusetts in, 1980. Like it was a pretty early flag raising by way of, bands like SSD.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think that in terms of that's how I think things can kind of start. They're like a response to there being nothing, and then they change over time. Is like I would say, whatever is a dominant sound, there tends to be a response to it. And maybe sometimes the response to the dominant sound is a continuation of that. Sometimes it's just like,
Hmm.
let's switch it up, let's change it. It was just like in Boston, it was very obvious when a new sound would change. It was just
Yeah.
there was less competition though in the early 2000s and the late 90s. It was like honestly like if you had to be from Boston or California to get attention. Like if you weren't even like being even from like New York, it was like New York. It seemingly kind of in the late '90s. It kind of I think Madball had taken Gun on hiatus, and New York was kind of not super in vogue in the late '90s, early 2000s. And but I mean, it's back in vogue. But I remember it being like, is there a scene in New York still? And of course there was, but
Yeah, it's interesting just because like I have friends in Mississippi from doing this, and that region is so dominated by stoner rock. and by sludge and by
Mm.
doom,
Hmm.
which is awesome. And but it's a completely separate thing. And to see bands like MS Paint kind of rise up from the ashes, like being a flag raiser, like you said, makes me wonder. I mean, is this the big shift? Is this what's going to happen? Because I think it's happening
Oh,
for an area that's been so
mm,
dominated by that sound for so long. See a
yeah.
band kind of do this insane national run.
Hmm.
I mean, their
Yeah,
tour
it's
is
it.
humongous. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, they're very influential on me. My new project is like heavily involving synth and stuff like that.
Ooh.
Um, so like I think I hope that they would have an influence more locally. But definitely have an impact on me. Um, we Fiddle did a tour with them, and I had already been kind of messing around with a friend of mine, working on this project that is now How Much Art. But we were already kind of working on some synth, but like I felt a little more emboldened, to like, oh, that's really cool. A band. I don't know if you ever listened to The Refused, but
Yeah.
like the late '90s, they mid to late '90s, they put out a record called The Shape of Punk to Come, and they were experimenting with synth and stuff like that, and like it was still hardcore and it's pushing into it. And so like I would like to see a little bit more inclusion of that, but not into the point where it's like we've lost it. It's just like techno. I think it's like you can involve it, and
Of course.
yeah. So yeah, does that
Oh, yeah,
answer your
perfect.
question?
And it actually leads me to a great pipeline because of this. I think hardcore's also kind of known, maybe jokingly, because of the fact that brands or bands so often rise up and fizzle out and kind of do this thing where they'll be active for a while and then, fall apart. And it's kind of a local thing, but also kind of a maybe a scene thing, like where I don't see that as much with emo, for example. I mean, Silverstein, that's insane. They're like awesome. They're like old now. It's like it's awesome.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about maybe some of your older bands and again some of your newer bands and kind of like the continuation of your history, right? Now with your new band playing a couple gigs, which is lining up to be awesome. How are you using the history before and maintaining a balance between, like we talked about, not turning into techno, but also how do you keep the legacy of those bands alive? I mean, I'm assuming people are always knocking at your door for some more Half Heart. I know that Atlanta is like foaming at the mouth for
Oh
some
yeah.
more Half
Oh,
Heart because we haven't
oh,
seen
man.
y'all in maybe even a decade, you know? So
Yeah.
I was
Well,
wondering like that
20.
legacy.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I played. Atlanta was the first home that like outside New England that we ever had. It was really important
Yeah.
for us.
I know you guys hit this on the world tour, but if you need someone to book you a cool new spot, then you know where to look.
It's complicated. Complicated. I'll just put it at that.
Of course, yeah.
Um, but uh, it's an interesting question. Can you rephrase it again, or
Sure, yeah. I
like
mean, kind of keeping the legacy of your former bands alive without compromising maybe artistic integrity and without changing yourself too much, like
uh-huh.
keeping your former projects alive
Yeah,
and
okay. I
also
get it.
maybe,
Okay.
yeah, pushing yourself in a new direction.
Yeah, all right. That's a cool question. That's a very thoughtful question. You are a thoughtful human being,
Oh, thank you.
especially I hate it when people say especially for your age, but like yeah, especially for your age. I feel I have authority on this. I work with you people. You 15-year-old
No, I'll
people.
take it. I'll take anything I can get.
You seem really passionate about music. I think it's great. You interview like Ween. That's amazing.
We're doing another conversation, hopefully this week actually.
Nice, nice, nice. Um, yeah. So, well, for one, legacy is a weird thing. I was lucky to, I think, see some non-examples or how like don'ts. In the late '90s, or I would say the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, there was a kind of this like suddenly all these bands that broke up 15, 20 years ago started playing again. And It's very exciting, the first show, and then it wasn't exciting, the
Mm.
second show. And and then it was very exciting, and then you get to the show and it's like something's off with the vibe. Maybe it's how the bands are carrying themselves. Maybe it's the merch, like, and I don't mean just like I don't mean like it just doesn't look good. I mean like it,
Even like the prices, sometimes like these post reunion bands, you're looking at t-shirts are like 40, $50. It's like,
yeah,
no one has that money.
yeah, it's
Leaves a bad taste.
some of that, yeah, like, and it reunions are weird. You don't know what to expect. Time has changed. People fall around it. It's a very weird thing because you're dealing with the problem of nostalgia as opposed to like just living in the present. And so I think the lesson that people of my age learned, because we were like technically the first generation to see the first wave of the reunions of like
Yeah.
the 80s, all the 80s bands. And so we kind of were able to say like, don't do it that way. You know, there's a way to do it differently in a way that doesn't feel like it's like move aside everyone from the present. Um, so that's a that's an important feature. But also at the same time, I cannot care about it so much. Like you're not in control of how people remember you at all. You you can have some influence, like it's more like curation, which I've really appreciated what Bridge Nine has done over the years. They just keep it available, keep it, hanging around. Like Bridge Nine did a nice job at like keeping the memory of Havart around. But also like, I don't know, people said to me like, you know, you didn't check out and then just do a reunion, like you kept playing music. Like, and I was like, yeah, because I like doing that. I like playing music.
I'd
I
hope
like
so.
I like writing music. I like, uh, you know, I really like, um, my friend Gil calls them, science project bands. I really do. They're like, it's not a, those are typically side projects. Like Wolf Whistle was this band that I did as a side project to Have Heart because like I loved power violence and it was just like, I loved the fast pace of it. And, one of my like closest friends, Trevor Vaughn, who like just wrote it for a living. Like he was just in him. And I was like, I'd like to, let's just do that. And so we did that. And then,
Yeah.
um,
And not to like interject, but funny enough, I got multiple questions asking you about that reunion too,
a
which
Wolf
was,
Whistle reunion.
yeah, I
Oh,
wasn't gonna bring
cool.
it up, but like, yeah, you brought it up, so perfect.
Oh yeah. I don't, we never really broke up. We just like stopped playing.
Yeah.
And I like that bit. Wolf Whistle is eternal. Totally forever lasting. And I would be happy to play again. That is now it really, that band has become less of a power violence side project and more of just like pure gonzo, anything goes, like truly like no rules. Like the last LP that we wrote is like, sounds like Tom Waits, Nirvana, Harvey Milk. Like there's just a lot going on there. Like, and it's just lyrically, it's one of my favorite outlets because I just feel very completely like I think the most free in that setting. Um, so I'd love to. We have there's a record I want to write called The Mass Suicides. Um, and I just want to write a bunch of songs about really um, raw, tragic things that have happened in Massachusetts that no one really knows about. Everyone has this like kind of like stereotypical idea that everyone in Massachusetts is like this like waspy Harvard intellectual, and I'm like, oh, it is not that what you see in the movies, and 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 I also think there's a stereotype that everyone thinks it's like something out of Good Will Hunting, and it's not all that either. So uh but the problem is Trevor says that name, the mass suicides, will get us canceled. And I'm like, I don't think so.
Uh, I have
Um,
faith that that won't, I mean, especially in today's, what's going on, you're gonna have to say some, like going back to it, there's some things you gotta chant at Glastonbury to get yourself canceled.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's fine. It's a dumb joke between us. I was like,
Yeah.
the record should be called Mass Suicides, and he's like, no way, it's a stupid title. And I was like, yeah, but if you read the lyrics, it's not going to be as stupid. And so that's the hold up there. But he's been sending me riffs, and they're cool. This one song. It's just I think it's just it's just an accordion. Uh, but so that was a side project to Have Art, and then
Yeah.
Have Art broke up, and I did some more science project stuff because it's just I like being with friends and creating stuff, and those science projects were, like I did this band called Clear that I just wanted to write the demo that I wished Have Art had wrote that sounded like it was just like pure 80s straight edge hardcore, like just like Minor Threat, Uniform Choice, like fast paced, a lot of hi-hat action, but jammed in with a dose of like kind of like mid 80s like Youth Crew. Uh and I did that and that was fun. And then a side project that was a science project to that was while I was also doing Clear was this band called Sweet Jesus, which was like an obvious attempt to just express our love for the band Swizz, a DC hardcore band that was you can't put them in a box, and like we just love their riffs and like lyrically, they're like Sean Brown is one of my all-time favorite lyricists. His approach to it is just so perfect and on point to like what I want hardcore to be. And we did that, and Sean Brown sang on our LP. It was like slam dunk type of moment. Um, and that's fun, and like people aren't burning the midnight oil too hard for those bands. Uh, it's mostly fun. But then I started Fiddlehead, and it didn't feel like a science project. It just felt like it reminded me a lot of like where Half Art was like in its earlier stages. Like I just want to write something um that feels intense, and that's kind of it. Um, and so we did that, and that caught on. But it had legs to it because it was in no way, shape, or form an attempt to kind of like do it like a side project, like a science project. It was like
Mhm.
it was more of like an experiment, I guess you could say. Like Have Art was not experimental, but it felt like an experiment with ourselves. Um, and so you know, uh, I think all the while, like, and I'm still going to shows. I go to less shows now that I'm a parent and I just don't have the time, but I actually still book shows. Like I've come back to booking shows. I booked a show with this band called Start Today and um, Stand Tall and The Difference and Quick to Judge and Can't Lose and this band With Hate. I wasn't there though. I hit up that band Start Today. I was like, hey, I like you guys. You're from California. If you ever need a show in Boston, let me know. And they're like, actually, we do, July 7th. And I was like, great. I know I just promised you a show, but I'm gone that day. I will still get the venue and get it all and book everything and get it pumped up. And so,
Ironically enough, I think that band just played Atlanta
oh,
yesterday.
cool. Oh,
I
nice.
like I just remembered them being on a bill. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good straight edge kind of classic hardcore youth crew stuff. Um, young. I think like just basically your age, maybe a little bit older. But anyway, yeah, I've I'm not like booking shows all the time and like going to every single show, but I'm involved in the culture, and it's not just like you know pure performance, but yeah, I- you know, it's hard to go to every show when you're
course.
a parent of two, you work full time, and like, uh, so I do what I can. I don't know. I think that that reads on people, and like, through whatever my social media presence is, I really do try to like promote younger stuff and newer stuff. Like, when that band Anxious had just started out, I really liked that they had a spirit that I recognized, and I was like, I think this is a good band. So I kind of like, I don't know, went to town and was just like, people got to listen to this band. You gotta check them out. And like, I kind of tried to wave their flag, and they've caught on, and they're doing fine. They're doing well. And, same thing when I just reached out to band Stand Tall, this band Quick to Judge. Like, I'm really interested in kind of like what's coming up. Those are the things. And I don't know. I think that people see that, and they're like, oh, this person isn't just like a performer, they like the culture. And I don't know. I that's all real, And so for whatever it's worth, I think that that might have some type of positive impact on how people might perceive, you know, prior projects of mine, to be like, like not some artificial commercial that's tapping into like a trend of like, oh, hardcore's in, hardcore's
Hmm.
popular. It's like, oh no, this person actually like does this. They like it, they're involved with it. And not just for like whatever, not fame, but like notoriety that comes with it. Um, yeah, so I think that helps. Labels help. Bridge Nine Records did an amazing job at like kind of just keeping us alive. Run for Cover does a fantastic job,
Oh
and
yeah.
um, that those are pretty huge. Yeah, the labels are, people really, they underestimate how valuable they are to kind of keeping keeping like legacies alive. Or legacy is a weird term, like I think maybe it's memory and interest,
Spirit.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like, but um, there was something about your question. I don't know if I'm fully answering it though. Like, is it really good? Uh, how do I not let, what was it? Like, it was like,
I mean, kind of left like, let's see, like how to not let your current band overpower like the spirit of your old bands. I mean, it is what it is. I think you answered it, and we've got 3 minutes late. I don't, or 3 minutes more. I don't want to hold you any longer than how long I've held you. Um, I just want to say, thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you
yeah,
so
oh
much
yeah,
for
yeah.
staying in the scene and, like we said, not being performative because there are a lot of performative people in the scene,
Yeah, I
which kind
think
of
that that's
sucks.
what I was trying to get at,
Yeah.
you know, um, but very quickly, I, I I think it's important to like, if whoever's watching or whatever, like this stuff does. It's just kind of I think it's safe to say now in 2025 that the world of punk music is kind of like globally institutional. It's a global thing, and it it's interesting. It hasn't died, but it can. It totally is. It's not a given. I've seen the Massachusetts scene go woo down, and that was because I think that some gatekeepers were only interested in those on the other side of the gates, and they just
Hmm.
kind of locked them, and then they left it because they got bored. And they probably got bored because there were no young people. There was no new world and coming in because they locked the goddamn gates. And so, uh, I just think that like I'm more interested in, like I'd say before we started the interview, I'm more interested in like doing interviews with people like, that are starting things. You know what I mean? Like I hope to see, I'd be happy to do a retrospective with you, Jay, in 20 years. You're building something here, and this thing that you're building is, has the potential to create community and conversation and discourse. And I think that that's,
That's always the goal.
yeah, that's the point. So, uh, I, thank you for having me, and I'm more than happy, and I think more people should be, uh, you know, more interested in like what's coming up, as well as interested what's happened. You can't be anti. The second you start cutting off the history, whoa, 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 now you're losing the grounding. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
But you can't. It's a fine line. It's never the zero sum thinking of life is you got to avoid that.
Of course. And perfect ending. We've got less than a minute. I put a stopwatch on to make sure I don't get cut off. That's a perfect conclusion for this awesome, crazy, insane conversation that we've had that's kind of touched on everything. I want to thank you so much again for letting me speak to you. If you need booking in Atlanta, if you want to collaborate on some booking in Atlanta, you know where to find me. Thank you
Yeah.
so, so much. And I don't know when Zoom's going to kick me out. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon
All right. Thanks,
or
Jay.
night.